Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the EcomXFactor podcast. In today's episode we have with us Carlos Alvarez. Carlos is the owner and founder of Bluebird Marketing Solutions and the Wizards of Amazon. Carlos embarked on his e-commerce journey 15 years ago, and in these conversations he shares some amazing stories. He talks about how he first started his eBay business, how he was scammed and lost $80,000 and how he sold an insect trading company for millions of dollars. Carlos also shares very insightful knowledge during this talk about hiring, delegating tasks and scaling multiple businesses. Please enjoy this wide-ranging conversation with Carlos Alvarez. Hi Carlos, how are you?
How are you, Aaron? How are you doing?
I'm awesome. I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm in Miami, Florida. So we are, this week is supposed to be the worst week to date for COVID-19 and coronavirus. So considering the circumstances, I'd like to say I'm doing as great as can be expected.
That's great. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear. How does it look like there in the street? Like, are people going outside? People going to the parks, or everybody is isolated and doing like ordering from home and stuff like that?
My wife and I and our two kids, we're self-isolating, and we're ordering a lot from Instacart and Postmates, and then we clean or sterilize the bags even that come into the house. My neighbors that I see look like they're all doing the same. However, 2 days ago, I needed to get something from my office so that I can continue working from home. So I put gloves, I took all the precautions, I stayed away from everyone, and in the roads, it looked like people were driving around like normal.
Yeah.
Which seemed a little alarming, but time will tell.
Yes, it's same here. So how do you feel about like working from home these days? Did you set up like an office? Did you have an office before, or?
Yeah, I've been a full-time entrepreneur now for about 15 years. And one of the things that I was most excited about when I went full-time with this is the ability that I'd be able to work from home. And I realized almost immediately that it's almost impossible for me to work from home. For some reason, I don't have the discipline. I'll get depressed. I don't know. I've never been able to find out. I've hired coaches, and it's my Achilles heel, working from home. So I have offices, and I work. My main office is about 20 minutes from my home, but now I'm working from what's going to be my daughter's bedroom. My daughter is almost 4 months old, and currently she's sleeping in the crib still in my wife and I's room. So I'm using her room as an office, and I have this, which you saw earlier, this vinyl brick backdrop behind me to give it a little flavor.
Yeah, it's very cool. I like it. It's interesting, yeah, because like many people now, they need to change the way they work. And for us, me and my wife, we're digital nomads, and we work from different places all over the world, and we are used to working from home. But I speak with many friends and colleagues and other e-commerce store owners, and they say that suddenly working from home is so difficult, and they feel like their productivity has went really down, and that they can't get anything done. So how do you feel about that? Have you made any adjustments?
I've definitely made some adjustments. I've always been a fan, let's not say always, but I've been a fan of meditation, of ice baths, of getting some sun. And over the last few years, as my businesses have just exploded successfully, I've had less and less time to do that. So I'm scheduling into my calendar things like still continuing to get up very early in the morning, still sticking to my routine as much as possible, stepping outside and getting some sun, picking up some weights or doing some jumping jacks or stretches, and scheduling in the things that I know I'm going to need to do to get in the zone where I need to be. a little hack that I've done for myself is I know that even when I'm not working from home, I know that there's going to be times that I'm not 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me if you hear my son in the background, but working from home, you know how it is. So you know that there's going to be some times when you're not 100%, that you're not having your best day, or you don't feel like you have your own bandwidth, or you're dealing with imposter syndrome or something. So my way of combating that, and I'm using a lot of that now, working from home, is I just acknowledge it.
Yeah.
I talk to myself and tell myself why this is happening. And then I have a series of go-to videos that on YouTube or music playlist that I'll listen to that are extremely motivational and help me put things back in perspective.
That's cool. Can you throw in a few examples?
Absolutely.
Like anything famous?
I think this one's relatively famous. It's Eric Thomas, or E.T., the hip hop preacher. He has this YouTube video called if you type in "want it as bad as you want to breathe," and it just great video. And the crux of it is that, somebody holds this person that wants to succeed. He holds their head underwater and holds it and holds it and holds it till the person just couldn't breathe anymore. And then he lifted him up and said, until you want success as bad as you wanted to breathe, then you're not going to get it. So that one, and there's another one by Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's a long one, but I think it's by Mulligan Brothers. But Arnold Schwarzenegger has one that is that says, it starts off talking about how he hates Plan B and how people having a Plan B actually takes away from a lot of the energy they have to focus on their Plan A or their priorities, because they're thinking and planning for Plan B. And that we as humans, and I think also to an extent as entrepreneurs, we function better without a safety net, and Plan Bs are that safety net.
I agree. Yeah, I really like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, many people just think he's a meathead and a bodybuilder, but he has accomplished so much in his career and so many different stuff, like from bodybuilding to business. Then he became a politician, and his biography is very, very interesting, and he's also a great motivator. So I definitely agree with what you said regarding the Plan B. Not having a Plan B.
And he's an immigrant too. It's just amazing. Yeah. His story's amazing. Very inspirational.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's probably one of the most unique stories out there. Can you tell us a bit about we spoke about like the beginning, and at the beginning we spoke about your habits and how are you dealing with the COVID, but we haven't shared your background. And can you tell us a bit more about your background and your businesses that you mentioned?
Absolutely. I'll try to keep it as short as possible, but as a kid, I was just, I'd say nothing too special. I came from a very dysfunctional home as an adult. That's what I've learned to call it. As dysfunctional as you could ever imagine, that's what it was. And I guess I acted that out in school. So I never completed our elementary school here, and in the fourth grade, I literally walked out and went fishing. So in fourth grade, you're probably 6 years old. So at 6 years old, I started skipping school, and I never returned. Later in the years, I wound up getting a GED, which is a general equivalency diploma, or something equivalent to a high school diploma. And then I was just getting into all kind of trouble as a kid, just everything you could possibly think of wrong, like rebel with capital letters. And I noticed that a lot of my peers, my friends, they went on and they were getting these successful jobs. They were getting these, relationships, and I was sort of falling behind. So I would, get all these odds and end jobs. I was working at a supermarket. I was delivering subs. I was selling cigars. And eventually I had this expensive ex-girlfriend, and I wanted to constantly buy things for her. So she was very embarrassed of what I was doing. I was very embarrassed of what I was doing. But I wound up discovering eBay. So I would get a hold of little odds and ends, things from garage sales, and I would sell them on eBay. And as things started progressing and I was getting more and more sales, I would little by little drop one of the jobs that I have, whether it was, delivering subs or selling cigars or anything like that. And as I started dropping those jobs, eBay eventually became a full-time business model for me. So friends and family, seeing that I'm doing good, they invested, they pulled the money together and wound up getting $81,000 to invest in me.
Cool.
And my most lucrative or profitable product at that time was an adult novelty product that you could purchase from China. It was a silicone ring. I guess I'll leave it at that so it stays clean on the show, right?
Yeah.
But it was a silicone ring with a motor, and I would get them for 16 cents, and then I'd sell them for 20-something dollars, and they'd fly.
Nice.
So when I got all this money, I imagined placing this massive bulk order from China and that I was going to be rich. So I contacted the factory, a guy named Elvis. The factory's name was Pleasure Chest. It's around to this day. Elvis is still there and Pleasure Chest is there to this day.
Okay.
And I tried to place an order for, $81,000 of these products. Mind you, it would have been about 11 40-foot containers of product, which I had nowhere to store it. And fortunately, or unfortunately, the factory did not have that much in stock on hand. I didn't understand that was normal back then. I thought that the factory was just not taking me serious. So I went on Alibaba. I thought I was the only one that knew about Alibaba back then. And I assure you, 15 years ago, Alibaba looked totally different than what it looks like now. And I found somebody else who had the product that I needed in stock. So I purchased it from them. It was about 79,000 something, almost $80,000 worth. His name was Usman Sise at a factory in Hong Kong. I sent him the money and he stole everything from me. The factory didn't exist. I didn't think that there could be scammers. That shows you that the degree of how naive I was. At the time, a Google Earth search would have exposed that there are no factories in Hong Kong. They're all in mainland China. It was bad. So I didn't want my friends and family to know that, Carlos messed up again.
Yeah.
I think half of them would have thought I stole the money. Half of them would have been, we kind of expected that.
Yeah.
But I was really enjoying that look they'd give me of, wow, like you're going to be somebody, you're going to be successful. So I didn't tell them, and I started gathering up what little possessions I had and selling them so I could get seed capital and start selling other products online that, like drop shipping or something that didn't require me to have inventory on hand. It was my thoughts then.
Yeah.
And one of the things I went to go sell were two of my reptiles, two snakes. I've always been a lover of reptiles. And the person in front of me when I was in line with these two pillowcases to ask him to buy my Burmese python and Colombian red-tailed boa this person was paying $25 for 50 live worms. And I remember thinking, again, desperation sometimes breeds genius. I remember thinking, well, I can dig for worms all day. I don't mind. Like I just want to like pay these people their money back and be successful. So I went to a public library and found an article by a zoologist saying that the reptile department could save money breeding insects for food for the reptiles instead of paying top dollar on the private sector. So fast forward, I wind up breeding insects in my home. I was purchasing garage sales, and I was selling these insects about 1,000 to a box, 4,000 to a box. And code enforcement knocks on my door one day. My ex-girlfriend left me at that point. One thing is you're being embarrassed of your boyfriend selling online. The other one, he's got a house full of insects,
Yeah.
And code enforcement tried to kick me out of my house. I'm not kicking me out of my house, told me to throw all the insects out of my house. I bluffed them saying it would be an agricultural disaster if I did. They gave me till the next day. I found a friend who loaned me half of his warehouse for rent-free for 6 months. And 9 months later, I had I wound up getting the whole warehouse to myself because he didn't want to share the warehouse with insects in there. But fast forward 9 months of working 90 to 100 hours a week, sleeping at the warehouse, and selling a ton of these live insects on eBay and Amazon, I wind up selling my business for $2.6 million.
Wow. Amazing.
And then with that, I never looked back. So we're
great.
talking about 14 years ago. Since then, I've used the money. I've created and sold over a dozen brands that I launched on Amazon, but obviously sold off of Amazon as well. I currently have 5 brands. 9 years ago, I started an agency helping people of all level successfully sell on Amazon or Ecommerce, on social media. And last 2 years, we broke over 100 million in gross sales each year selling online. So that's the short version.
That's such a amazing story. I'd like to hear the long version, but I have 2 questions that
Sure.
I wanted to ask. They are from beginning points in the story that might be relevant to our audience. So the first, did you have any sort of KPI which you wanted to achieve before you quit the day jobs? I mean, what made you decide, okay, I'm going to do this full time. I'm going to do the eBay full time.
That's a really good question. I didn't know what a KPI was or cash flow was or anything back then. When I sold that first item on eBay, and I don't even remember what the item is anymore. Some people say they have it like in a frame on their wall. I don't even remember. But the feeling I got from that transaction it was empowerment. It was, I almost got like a sense of self-worth from this, but it was mostly empowerment. And from up to that point, living a life of, not feeling in control, or working for somebody else, or having to do things I didn't like to make money. That one transaction for me immediately lit a light bulb up and said, well, if you can do a lot of this, maybe this is all you'd need to do. And even if that meant staying up all night, taping boxes and putting widgets inside of them to send out, that freedom from working for somebody, that freedom of no longer having to do things I thought that I would not ever want to do. That's what did it for me. I didn't know what KPIs and cash flow were for years. As a matter of fact, that first business I sold, I still didn't know what a KPI was. I still didn't know what cash flow was. Obviously, I learned them the hard way and why they're important over the years. But no, I didn't know. I just knew that the joy I got from sourcing, listing, selling, shipping, packaging far surpassed anything that I was doing, delivering subs, selling cigars, or working for somebody else.
Yeah, for sure. It makes total sense. And what about the moment that you felt that you understood that this was a scam? Can you elaborate a bit about the process of understanding it was a scam, that the guy in Hong Kong scammed you? And what red lights was there that you ignored, and retrospectively you should have noticed? Like what you said, a quick look in Google Maps you would have realized it was a scam. So what else did you ignore, and how was the process of realizing this?
The person stopped replying once I sent the money.
So pretty obvious.
So there was immediate panic, but even then, my panic was not that I got ripped off. My panic was, and I think I didn't think that because I said to myself, well, in the back of my head, I never even had this conversation with myself, but I was like, well, I sent it through my bank. I can always have them get it back. And the other, as 3 days turned into 5 days. I think right around the 1 week mark, I was like, I still wasn't telling myself that I was ripped off. I was telling myself, well, what if the person did die? What if they passed away? What would I do without this person's help on the other end? to get these products. I had already in my mind had this, I'm going to sell this. It's going to take me like 3 months to pay everybody back. I had already started planning this new lifestyle in my head.
Yeah.
So I was thinking a lot about that. Around the 1 week mark, a little past, I started doing some research online, using Google, using search terms with Alibaba in it, and missing money or sent money, no goods, and things like that. And just it felt like an icy dagger in my stomach. All the articles that started coming up about rip-off artists and scams on Alibaba. I just, in my gut, I knew immediately what had happened then.
Yeah.
Now the red flags that I immediately noticed, and I actually did an episode on my podcast about it, is one of them, the location. That type of factor. There's no factories in Hong Kong. They're in mainland China. The second one was the bank account that they gave me to pay to a non-Chinese person. It all sort of looks the same, but this was a personal bank account and not a business bank account. So the person had me send it to them to their personal account. Huge problem. Third, there was no company chop or factory chop or stamp on the invoice. What else? That were like huge. This one's not so much of a red flag, but it's sort of like in retrospect, this is something you should always do if you're working with a factory in China, and that is third-party inspection companies. Very, very affordable. One that I've worked with, almost religiously for since then is VTrust, V as in Victor -trust.com. And they have all manner of types of inspections. One of them is just verify that they exist. Yeah. And I think that one's like $75. So imagine for $75, I could have saved $80,000. You also have things like pre-shipment inspection, verify that the goods that they made meet your quality standards. Full factory audits to make sure that, even if the factory does exist and you send them a lot of money, are they on the verge of bankruptcy to where they're going to go bankrupt before your goods are mass produced? Just all manner of inspections that I definitely should have done. So those would be the main ones that come to mind.
And do you think it's necessary these days to fly to China to meet the people, or not really?
It's not necessary at all. However, I've traveled to China over 50 times. For product sourcing. There was times where I was going up there a few times a month. So if you imagine, let's just say 13 years that I've been traveling to China, and I've been over 50 times, it gives you an idea just as to how often I go to China.
Correct.
And obviously not now with Corona, but
for sure.
Once it clears up, I think I would go back. But no, 100% you do not have to go to China to successfully sell products from China, to successfully grow a brand. Having said that, if you have a factory that you're working with, visiting them will give you added benefits. You will get preferential treatment. Your products will be prioritized, giving you shorter lead times. It's just like you and I. Imagine if what our relationship is like, say now virtually, versus if we began being neighbors and going bowling together and going out for drinks or anything. The relationship would change for the better.
I agree.
And in China, that's called Guangxi. And Guangxi is very important over there. So no, you do not need to go to China to be successful, but there are benefits if you do.
I see. Very interesting. Okay, so you mentioned that you've been able to scale such a huge milestone, and you have so many different product lines. So I was wondering, how exactly do you manage all of this? What is the hierarchy in your company? Do you use VAs?
Yeah, I have one of my first Amazon accounts got suspended, and I had no idea why. Just from one day to the next, I was getting money and then I was not, and that terrified me. So once I got unsuspended and continued selling, I decided to diversify my money, and so I started selling on a lot of different business models. I started selling just off my website. So I continued selling on Amazon, obviously. I started selling, using ghostwriters and self-publishing royalties. I started selling print on demand.
Yeah.
And I also started getting a percentage of that money and opening up local traditional brick and mortar retail stores around me. So to date, I have over 50 businesses that I own. And yes, you're absolutely right. To scale something like that, it really does. I think almost all success, it takes a team. And in my case, that team looks like 81 domestic employees and 242 virtual assistants across all of those businesses. In reality, some of the businesses don't have a virtual assistant or a domestic employee, but other ones have a bunch. But if you averaged it out, I think that comes out to about 5 point something virtual assistants per business.
Yeah.
Which is not as unrealistic as when you first hear 242 and 81 domestic employees. What happened and how I got into virtual assistants is when I sold that first business that I mentioned, the first insect business, which, mind you, once the non-compete ended, I started that business again, and I currently have a business that sells live insects online, and now it's one of my most lucrative businesses. But when I sold that first business, my ex had left me, and I did what any, I guess, uneducated, don't know what cash flow and KPI person would do with a bunch of money now. And I just started partying around Miami. I started, living it up. And I realized at some point that I was going to go broke if I kept this up, and that I needed to start something else. So when I started my next brands on Amazon, I also saw, I went to some networking events. I looked online. There wasn't as much information then as there is now. But I noticed that a lot of the really successful people, they talked about hiring coaches and masterminds and gurus. So I hired 2 coaches, and I paid a good amount of money for them. And one of them was an organizational coach, and it was going to help me work from home and organization, because I had already learned at that point that I didn't have the discipline to work from home. And that didn't go very well. We wound up getting into a relationship and everything. Again, it was a mess.
Okay.
And the other coach, a gentleman by the name of Chris Ducker, this was my coach from afar. He was teaching about virtual assistants, virtual teams, how to build them, how to hire them, and even had, I think still has, his own agency where you can hire some real crack virtual assistants. So again, I think I was like $40,000 in with this person at this point, but you can find out everything that he taught for like $9.99 now in a book called Virtual Freedom. And I learned how and when to hire virtual assistants from Chris Ducker. Since then, because even in Chris's book, I think a big team there was 6 to 10 people, not an army of 242. 242, to put in perspective, is more virtual assistants than some virtual assistants sites have available. So what I do is I have 4 C-level virtual assistants or corporate level virtual assistants, and then beneath them I'll have 6 to 8 M-level, manager level virtual assistants. And then beneath the M-level virtual assistants, I have a lot of pods. And the pods will have anywhere from 4 to 6 virtual assistants in each one, and each one of them have a team leader. So the team leader deals with the pod, and the team leader communicates to the M-level VA. The M-level VAs do everything, the majority of the work that they need to do, and then filter that through to the C-level VAs. And then I only deal with the C-level virtual assistants. The only exception to that is I have a small team of virtual assistants that work with me on the meetup group and some of the agency work that I do. So I'd say my weekly contact with virtual assistants is about seven people.
I see. Interesting. So at the end of the day, most of the you don't do any hands-on stuff. You don't enjoy doing hands-on stuff, or?
Oh, I do a lot of hands-on stuff. I love starting new things and getting my hands dirty and figuring it out. I enjoy creating processes though, so that not out of a sense of laziness so that other people can do it, but more out of a sense of just hiring people that are smarter than me.
Yeah.
And that can do it better than me.
Mm-hmm.
And then empowering them to do it so that I can create something else. And I do love focusing on the marketing side of all of these businesses, but no, it would be physically impossible to be involved in the day-to-day in all of these businesses.
For sure.
I also realize that I'm not a good CEO.
Mm-hmm.
I also don't like being a CEO.
Yeah.
I don't like the day-to-day tasks that come with being a CEO.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I like about CEO is the ring that you hear when you hear the word CEO, or the look you get when they say that's the CEO. But that's a horrible, the day-to-day task for a CEO, just, oh my gosh, I'd rather be a barista at a coffee shop than be a CEO. So the CEO of a 1 to 3 person company, fantastic. Mm-hmm. When it gets bigger than that, I don't want anything to do with it. I want to be the CMO, founder, CMO. And I quickly, when I start a business, try to achieve those roles.
So would you consider all the C-level VAs that you have, they are CEOs of the businesses? You consider them CEOs?
They all need to fulfill CEO roles, yes.
Mm-hmm. I see. And what exactly like is your interviewing and recruiting process? Do you have any go-to platform? Do you use from FreeUp or Upwork, or you have different platforms that you use? How do you interview?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Upwork.
Mm-hmm.
I recently switched to a paid model, but still very affordable to me. Yeah. The vast majority of my virtual assistants have been through Upwork. Mm-hmm. I'm really good friends with the founder of FreeUp, Nathan Hirsch, who recently sold it to the Hoff.
Yeah.
And I've hired from FreeUp. They're a really good agency focused on e-commerce. I currently don't have any hires from there. Yeah. I've used YourTasker. Mm-hmm. I've used onlinejobs.ph. I've used Mechanical Turk. Mm-hmm. I've used guru.com. I've used a lot of them. So, but the majority come from Upwork. Now, the hiring process for me, taking a step back to Chris Ducker and his book, before anyone hires a virtual assistant, they should create 4 lists. Mm-hmm. Everything you do to manage your business, everything you do to grow your business, everything you love to do in your business, and everything you hate to do in your business. And once you do that, you will...
Amazing idea. I love it.
Right. So you should do that, because a lot of people feel, I need to hire someone to do this one thing, like maybe my PPC. Mm-hmm. But in reality, that's not the best hire that they should do. Mm-hmm. By hiring out a more affordable position and a safer one to control, it would actually free up more time so they could master, say, their PPC. Yeah. Or spend more time on a better hire. Like, PPC is not for everybody. So doing those lists will allow you to identify everything that is non-sales or strategic, mm-hmm. and that is repetitive. Yeah. And then you can assign like an hourly amount of time that it takes you to do each, mm-hmm. And then hire based on those lists. Hire for the role, not for the task. Yeah. And what you're quickly going to find after hiring a few people, mm-hmm. is that hiring is a repetitive task. Yes. And that hiring is is almost an art. Mm-hmm. So am I the best person to do interviews? I have a lot of experience, but probably not. Mm-hmm. So I hired someone in-house that handles my hiring. It's a repetitive task, so I created processes for that, to get it off my plate. I see. Very interesting. And for me, I also hire most of my VAs from Upwork, and I try to focus, like you said, on the strategical stuff. I want to do the stuff that really move the needle, and outsource what I don't like doing. But once you mentioned this list, it gave me an idea that I have to outsource all the accounting stuff, because I don't like doing the accounting, and I didn't outsource this yet because I didn't feel so comfortable giving such important and such crucial data. So how do
how do you attack the whole idea of giving trust into someone? How do you know what to share, what not to share? Do you have like tips regarding this?
Yeah, I take advantage of some tools. Like, I'll use things like LastPass for logins. In the interview, you're gonna get attuned to, who does this for a living.
Yeah.
And who just set up a profile real quick,
Yeah.
I'll also reach out to my banks and let them know what I'm trying to do. And, this person doesn't work in the country, and, does it make sense to let them use my logins, or does it make sense to create a user? So every scenario is different. Regarding taxes and bookkeeping, though, it's actually quite easy.
Yeah.
They don't need access to be able to actually spend off of your accounts. They just need access to the reports from your accounts.
Yeah,
so there's no, the biggest risk there is that they would get your financials and share them.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, your business should be striving to do the best it can anyway.
Yeah.
I don't use screen tracking software, and if someone's on my team and they've made it through the interview process and they've made it through maybe their, I hate to use the word, but probationary period, then they are given a level of trust. I don't want people working for me that are follow the leader types or reactive. I need people that are going to take ownership and be proactive in doing their tasks. So to have those kind of people, those type of people are not going to tolerate being spoon-fed step by step.
And how do you incentivize? Do you have like different incentivizing models, or do you pay hourly fees, or?
I pay both. I pay flat salaries. I pay per project. They pay hourly. Depends on what's being done.
Yeah.
And incentivizing, no, I'm not a fan of anytime I've attempted to do something, say it was leads. The more leads you get, the more I pay you.
Yeah.
No, because that incentivizes someone to bring in, crappier leads.
Yeah, I agree.
So I know, I know based on my trainings and the level of experience of the person that's hired, approximately what they should be bringing in.
Yeah.
And if that's not being met, then we revisit the trainings and we talk it through and we reset expectations. Anytime something goes wrong or objectives are not met in my business, I don't react with firing. I first look at, where did we fail in our processes and in our management that this could have happened, and then work it backward from there.
I see. Very interesting. And do you use any program for tracking everything, like Asana or Trello or just ordinary Google Sheets? We tried so many different softwares. At the end, for us, the most convenient is just using Google Sheets. What about?
I think Google Sheets have their place for cloud-based stuff, but for project management, I couldn't imagine using Google Sheets. So we all use Trello just because it's such an amazing, easy tool that integrates with everything. But for project management, we've used different tools over the years. We attempted to do it just on Trello. It becomes too difficult. It's not built for that many different projects with repetitive tasks, in my opinion. And you need other people notified when something finishes, and it's just too cumbersome. One tool that I used for quite a long time was process.st.
Okay.
Was a really good tool, really, really good at building processes and repetitive tasks. I got to a point with it where the plans were just not the most economical compared to what was out there. So I switched to Teamwork Projects. Teamwork Projects is fantastic. There's a few areas that are not the most user friendly, but they are absolutely fantastic. And important to me is that they have an internal communication app where the teams can have all of their communications, like a Telegram almost. And then from there, we move to something that's a little more user-friendly and easy on the eyes, where we're currently at, called Basecamp.
Basecamp.
We checked out Monday.com and Asana, and they really just seemed, they're amazing tools. I love marketing. I love Monday.com's marketing, but
yeah, they have great marketing.
They're brilliant. I want to sit down with their marketer, not the tool, but
yeah, for sure.
yeah. I think it's the only YouTube ad that I watch repeatedly, even though I know what's coming.
Yeah.
So they really just seemed like souped up versions of Trello.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they had features that it made you want to say, wow, I wish Trello had that.
Yeah.
But at a true project management level, they didn't work for me. Teamwork Projects is fantastic. Basecamp is fantastic. And we'll probably stay with Basecamp for a while, but there's another one out there called Rike. And some of my team is actually taking a look at Rike.
Cool.
Just because Rike is actually Basecamp with Trello baked in. So we're going to get the best of both worlds if we go there. And if it turns out that it's going to be a good fit, I couldn't imagine moving on to another tool after that.
Sounds like a jackpot.
Yeah.
So you have so many VAs, but do you also use like Zapier or any automation programs? And how do you decide what to use? Which task do you want manually be done by VAs, or which task do you want to automate using Zapier or anything like Zapier?
Yeah, I'm always a fan of hiring for the role, not the task. And anytime we bring tools on, one of the filters that the tool has to go through is we don't say that we're buying a tool. We say that we're hiring a tool. And then once you change that wording up, it seems small, but once you change up and say, I'm hiring this tool, and then you list out all of the tasks that hire or that tool would be doing, you then look at it and you're like, wait a minute, that's a task that so-and-so already has the skill set for.
Yeah.
Once you write out all the tasks that this hire is going to be doing, you then assign the skill sets that are needed to achieve each of the tasks that person's going to be doing. And when you look at it like that, you then either say, oh my God, we already have someone that does this. Like we have somebody, say this thing required like basic organizational skills and intermediate experience with Google Sheets and Google Docs. And we're like, wait a minute, we have a master here that does that creates courses on this and internal trainings on this. Why would we get this tool that's going to cost us $100 a month?
Yeah.
Or we look at it and say, oh my God, for us to hire someone like this would require us to pay $400 a week at the low end.
Yes.
And $1,600 a month, and we can get this for we can hire this for $99. Yes. So that's one of the processes we go through anytime we bring on a tool. We don't bring on tools lightly, but we hire them when appropriate.
I really like the concept, hiring a tool. It's such a, like you said, it's such a minor difference, but it makes all the difference. Nice. I really like the framework and way to think about this. Cool. And where can people find more? Like our time is almost up, and we covered a lot, mainly focused on using VAs and your background story, which is very interesting. And I'd love us to hop on another call in the future and ask more questions about the other businesses. And I'm sure you have a lot of knowledge and experience to share with the listeners. But if anybody wants to reach out or hear more about you or read more about you, I know you have the meetup going on and the podcast. So can you share a bit what are you doing these days and where can people find you?
Absolutely. And I am extremely humbled and appreciative that you have me on your show. I look forward to diving into your YouTube channel, EcomXFactor. I'm gonna try to model a few tips from you there on my own channel that I'm about to start. But for anybody listening that wants to ask or talk more about anything that we talked about here or anything else, e-commerce really, or Amazon, whatever, A few different ways to get a hold of me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very, very active on Instagram at Wizards of Amazon. So if you follow me over there and or just message me, I respond. That's the quickest way to get a hold of me.
Cool.
Would be on Instagram at Wizards of Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Anywhere on social media at Wizards of Amazon, I'll be there. And what else would I be able to, easy way to get a hold of me? I think that's best. I also, on these podcasts, I actually share my number. So you can text me at 305-902-1283. You'd be surprised. It's me. It's not a VA.
That's great.
It's me. But you'd be you'd be surprised how few people actually, because some people look at me afterwards like, you're crazy. You gave out your phone number on the podcast?
Yeah, this is what I thought. But then I said, probably people don't even message because they're too shy.
Exactly. And that's what happens. But you know what? If you can get past that and you want to talk, reach out to me and send me a text would be best.
Mm-hmm.
Text me, let me know this amazing podcast that you heard it on, and let's talk.
That's great. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for today. It was very interesting, and I already have a few ideas and stuff I would like to implement. The 4 lists that you mentioned and the whole framework of hiring a software and not buying a software. These are the things that stand out in my mind at the moment, but obviously I will view the recording and I have a lot of notes that I took that I'm going to implement, and I'm going to hopefully improve my business based on the podcast. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and
absolutely.
For your time.
Thank you for having me on.
Awesome. Great.